Our next call is from Miami. Good morning.
Morning. That's me?
Yes. Good morning.
Oh, great. I want to thank you for allowing me to participate in your program.
No, thank you for calling in.
I find very interesting that Ms. Hamsher questioned, first of all, how many foreign policy people has Sarah Palin met when she was a governor, or even when she was she was working in the government in Alaska. Nobody has asked how many foreign policy individuals did Barack Obama meet when he was in the legislature in Illinois, when he first got into the legislature in Illinois. Another thing, it's very interesting that Hamsher is always talking about all these sound bites. She really does honor the bloggers, because that's what she's been doing all morning. Just little sound bites about the phone, about the books, and no one seems to really argue the point that Barack Obama's campaign is paying 83 cents to a dollar to women, while McCain's campaign is paying $1.04. And just want to share some information. Here in Miami, many of Hillary supporters are voting Republican. And myself, which I haven't voted Republican probably in 30 years, will be voting for McCain. Not because he has a woman, and that will be a disrespect to my sex. Like the blacks, African Americans, 95% are voting for Obama, and probably if you ask them, 50% of them don't know what they're voting for, because they're just voting for him because he's African American.
Thank you, caller. Appreciate it. Let me go back to one point that she made, Mona Charen, about Florida, because if you look at the Real Clear Politics tracking in that state, Senator McCain is up anywhere from 3 to 7 points in Florida.
It's fantastic. I'll be in Miami tomorrow, in case the caller wants to drop by. The Jewish Policy Center is having a forum. Many of the points that the caller made were very, very good. You know, particularly the one about nobody questioned Obama's knowledge of foreign leaders when he was just quite recently in the Illinois legislature. Furthermore, when there were all these questions about her stance on abortion, we don't get any airing of the fact that Barack Obama is quite an extremist on abortion on the other side. He opposed a bill that would have simply permitted, in the case of a botched abortion where a child survives, called the Born Alive Infants Protection Act, he opposed that bill that would have just allowed that child to not be killed. So who's the extremist here?
That's a ridiculous characterization of the bill. That never happened. But be that as
it absolutely did.
There's no such thing as it just doesn't happen. A child born alive from birth. Name one time that it's happened.
I have met children who are the results of botched abortions that did not work. It absolutely happens. There have been cases just recently in Ohio. There was a case where a woman had come in for a late-term abortion, a partial birth abortion. The baby was born alive, and the hospital didn't know what to do with this baby because the baby was not supposed to be alive.
No, it's ridiculous.
No,
they don't. There's no baby born that they try and kill. It's ridiculous.
I will tell you what they did. They said, put it over there. They didn't do any resuscitation attempts. They said, go put it over there in the trash bin, basically, with the towels. And one of the nurses said, can I just hold that baby until she dies? And so they said, all right. And this nurse held the baby, who lived for another 5 hours or so.
That is a ridiculous right-wing fantasy.
It is not. I will introduce you to the nurse it happened to. It is not a fantasy. You've got to open your eyes. These things are happening in the United States of America.
Nobody is killing babies born from...
Where and when did that happen?
It was in Ohio. It was, I'm trying to remember the names. I have it at home. I will gladly provide it to anybody who writes to me, emails me, at mcharen@cox.net.
But recently,
it was called. It was within the last 10 years. It was called Baby Hope. Was the name that the nurse gave to that child. And later on, the hospital did say that they erred and that they should have transported the baby, who it turned out was older than they had thought when they were doing the abortion. They should have transported the baby to a neonatal intensive care unit.
Larry Eichel in the Philadelphia Inquirer, a run of familiar politics. He says in the paper this morning This has been the presidential election of a lifetime, different in so many ways from all that have come before. In the last week, though, it has reverted to something like business as usual, with a shrinking list of familiar battleground states and a nasty, often trivial back and forth between the candidates.
I agree. I think ever since Sarah Palin's speech that we have gotten off the issues and onto character, because that's where the Republicans want to take it. On every substantial issue in this country, the American public agrees with the Democrats. And so that's where the Republicans have to take it to win. That's what happened with the SWIFT voting last time. And Sarah Palin is a SWIFT voter in a skirt.
It did look like the country was headed in a Democratic direction. It did seem like the kind of reform Americans had an appetite for was the Democratic variety, until the pick of Sarah Palin, at which time it became clear, not that they were just distracted by surface things, the press certainly is, but I'm not convinced the American people are, but rather that provided you are preaching reform, there is a real appetite for that, and it may very well be that there is this, that there may be a majority out there, and which would mean the McCain-Palin ticket would win, that really does still want smaller, more accountable, more ethical government.
But the Washington Times quotes this statement, which we all received yesterday from the Obama campaign, in which they called John McCain running cynically the sleaziest and least honorable campaign in modern presidential campaign history.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that. I think his ad, accusing Barack Obama of wanting to, teach 5-year-olds about sex was one of the most dishonest things we've seen in this campaign, and I think that's been universally.
But aren't they both at fault then? When he calls it the sleaziest, least honorable campaign, and the McCain campaign issues the ads that you just referred to, aren't they both going at it in a way that many did not expect earlier this year?
I think that that's true, but it was a sleazy ad. And the reason John McCain is getting away with calling himself a reformer is because he has a lot of money. He has flouted campaign finance reform, which he says that he is responsible for, in order to not only take public financing to the tune of over $80 million, but also use the $200 million that the Republican campaign has in its coffers for his own ads by exploiting a loophole. And he's out there calling himself a reformer, and he's reformed nothing. He's got lobbyists running his campaign from the back of his bus, and nothing really has changed since the Keating Five. But if you tell people, if those are the ads that you put up, ironically, by breaking the laws you claim you're responsible for, it's hard to combat.
I was never a fan of campaign finance reform. Let me put that on the table. But having said that, let me tell you that your candidate, Barack Obama, first, proclaimed throughout the land that he was going to abide by the campaign. Yes, he did. He said if the Republican takes public funds, I will take public funds.
He never did. He said he would enter into. No, he did not. He said I would enter into conversations. John McCain did not agree.
Clear. No. It was very clear. And
Barack Obama said, and I will tell you, he said, I will enter into a conversation with the Republican. And John McCain, at the point that he got the nomination, had already broken campaign finance reform law during the primary.
We're talking about this was way back in the primaries.
But was there a conversation? Because there are conflicting stories. Was there ever a conversation between the Obama campaign and the McCain campaign?
Barack Obama said early on, before he got the nomination,
that he would enter the conversation.
He would enter into a conversation.
But
by the time John McCain got the nomination, he had, during the primary, already broken campaign finance reform law, according to the chairman of the FEC, David Mason.
But did they talk? Was there a conversation between the two campaigns?
Why would Barack Obama enter into an agreement with somebody who had already flouted campaign finance reform?
Jane, you are so far out there. The Washington Post.
David Mason, the chairman of the FEC, said that McCain had broken the law and had needed to go back before he could reform. And what happened? George Bush had him fired.
Maybe you're right. Or maybe the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal,
you just said was
Times,
unreliable.
The LA Times, all of these people are on the left. All of these people are liberals and support Obama, and all of them roundly condemned his hypocrisy on the campaign finance front. So you stand way out there on that subject.
And the campaign finance reform groups. Even Fred Wertheimer criticized John McCain for his hypocrisy over campaign finance law and what he did. And when he broke the law, The FEC said he'd broken the law, and George Bush replaced the head of the FEC so that John McCain could take public financing. So who is going to agree to abide by those laws when the Republicans have so clearly stacked the deck, and everyone was critical of that move of taking David Mason out?